Hello and welcome to Drama Recaps. Our subject of exploration today is the American crime drama film from 2021 titled Cherry. As the movie commences in 2007, we encounter a 23-year-old Cherry, embarking on a robbery mission. His backstory reveals a life haunted by depression and a sense of disillusionment. He is no stranger to robberies, adept at executing them flawlessly. Bursting into the bank, he fires a warning shot and proceeds to the teller. The sight of the woman triggers a wave of melancholy in him, plunging him into a flashback. Rewinding to 2002, Cherry is smitten by his enchanting classmate Emily at university. Their interaction is soured when Cherry confesses to having a high school sweetheart, Madison, studying in New Jersey. On a weekend visit to Madison, an unpleasant experience at a party leads to their breakup. Cherry finds employment at a restaurant, but his dismal dough-making skills see him jobless within a fortnight. Post-work, he visits his closest friend, James Lightfoot, an orphan, who lives in the shadow of his war veteran brother's depression. Cherry and James, accompanied by their friends Roy and Joe, set out to address Cherry's banking issues, only to face a series of unfortunate events. Cherry, who has been consuming Xanax to suppress his panic attacks, is approached by some youngsters seeking the same. Word of a party lures Cherry to crash it. High and slightly out of sorts, Cherry bumps into Emily. A spark ignites, leading to a flirtatious exchange, a shared kiss, and a night spent together. Emily is a beacon of empathy and compassion, characteristics that Cherry yearns for in a companion. She soothes Cherry's gloom, despite wrestling with her own inner demons, a byproduct of her abusive upbringing. When Cherry admits his love for her, she only responds with gratitude, unable to believe in the concept of love. As Cherry and Emily's bond flourishes, Emily opts to sever ties to study in Montreal. Cherry implores her to reconsider, but she remains unwavering, leaving Cherry heartbroken. To distract himself, Cherry decides to serve in the U.S. Army as a medic. Initially dismissed as a prankster by the recruiting officer, Cherry's resolve to find his purpose convinces them otherwise, and he is enlisted for a 2-year tenure. Unknown to his friends, Cherry embarks on a journey they've been discouraging their friend Joe from taking. Emily's call asking to meet one last time finds Cherry working at a new restaurant. He waits for her eagerly, only to be disappointed when she arrives with a friend, Benji. Upset with her lack of consideration, he asks her to leave. Heartbroken and vulnerable, Cherry is consoled by the restaurant owner who advises him to focus on a guest named Tommy. The two bond and Tommy offers Cherry a ride home. Upon arriving home, Cherry is surprised to find Emily waiting for him. She tearfully apologizes, and Cherry, ever the doting boyfriend, consoles her. Their reconciliation is marked by a sweet moment of shared muffins. Emily informs Cherry she's decided not to move to Montreal, admitting her love for him. Cherry shares his decision to join the army, leaving them both at a crossroads. They decide to pursue their paths separately. Emily will complete her 2-year degree, and Cherry will serve in the army. They marry in a courthouse before Cherry's deployment. In 2003, Cherry commences his basic training, undergoing physical transformations and meeting Jimenez, who shares his aspiration of becoming a medic. Despite the grueling training and harsh sergeants, Cherry perseveres. Deployed to Iraq as a medic, he is forced to confront grim realities. The strenuous training takes a toll on Cherry and his comrades, pushing one to the brink of suicide. Cherry persists, fueled by thoughts of reuniting with Emily. He and Jimenez master their medic training with the aid of mannequins, preparing for real battlefield scenarios. Eventually, they're deployed to their first real war zone. Cherry is filled with trepidation, alleviated by Jimenez's encouraging words. He's thrown into the deep end, treating a severely wounded soldier whose intestines are exposed. Despite the horrific sight, Cherry reassures the soldier and ensures his safe departure via chopper. Upon returning to camp, Cherry and his companions reel from the dreadful experience. They face 8 casualties on their first day and must confront the fear of being stationed in an area known as the Triangle of Death. They patrol relentlessly, attending to wounded Iraqis at night, with Cherry and Jimenez forming a deep bond over shared experiences. One day, Cherry cautions his sergeant about a risky route prone to quicksand, but his advice is dismissed. The vehicle indeed gets stuck in quicksand, and Jimenez and 3 other soldiers venture out to retrieve a tow cable. Their vehicle is obliterated by an improvised explosive device, IED. Cherry rushes to the burning vehicle, horrified to find his comrades, including Jimenez, burned beyond recognition. The gruesome task of bagging his friend's charred remains falls to Cherry, leaving him devastated and grappling with profound loneliness. He turns to Emily and confides his feelings. His 2-year service concludes in 2005, and he returns home to a warm reception. He's awarded the Medal of Valor, but he feels no sense of accomplishment. Emily's presence at his convocation provides him with some relief. Emily introduces Cherry to a home she's constructed. He begins attending night classes at a school where Emily works, and takes on a day job. Life seems promising, but Cherry's traumatic war experiences result in PTSD, leading to severe insomnia and anxiety. He starts using Xanax to manage his panic attacks. Seeing Cherry's erratic behavior, Emily becomes distressed and begins using Xanax herself to cope with her frustration. Meanwhile, Cherry's close friend James has descended into addiction. He mistakenly breaks into someone's house, believing it to be Cherry's, and gets arrested. Cherry helps him out by arranging bail, after which they start spending more time together. Emily feels neglected by Cherry, causing concern and sadness. In response, Cherry seeks clinical help and gets prescribed oxycodone. He soon begins misusing it. Driven to despair by Cherry's worsening condition, Emily decides to try his medication. The couple start using together, recalling past happier times, and eventually become addicted to OxyContin. The downward spiral continues as they move from OxyContin to heroin, leading them into a life of addiction. Financially drained, Cherry turns to his drug-dealing friend Pills and Coke for money. In return, Pills and Coke ask Cherry to guard a safe. Despite agreeing, Cherry, Emily, and James break into the safe, finding it full of drugs. After using most of the stash, they get a knock on their door while high. In a panic, they flush the remaining drugs, thinking the police are at the door. Instead, they find a furious Pills and Coke, who informs them that the safe belongs to his drug dealer boss, Black. He warns them that if Black discovers his drugs are missing, he will kill them all. To protect Emily and himself, Cherry decides to rob a bank to repay Pills and Coke. Cherry successfully manages the heist by discreetly showing the bank teller a note that says, "I have a gun." He repays the money and keeps some for himself. However, during a drug-fueled celebration at a restaurant, Cherry gets a call from Joe, who informs him that the police are searching for him. Cherry decides to lay low and spends all his remaining money on heroin until he's completely broke. Cherry starts robbing other banks using the same silent method of passing a note to the teller that reads, "I have a gun." He does this to fund his and Emily's ongoing heroin addiction. Despite the robberies, Cherry remains indebted to Pills and Coke for the continuous supply of drugs. One day, Cherry involves Pills and Coke in a bank heist, asking him to drive the getaway car. When he returns home, Emily is in withdrawal from not having taken heroin for a while. Cherry administers the drug to her, leading to an overdose that lands Emily in the hospital. Emily's mother blames Cherry for Emily's condition and demands that he leave her daughter. Cherry reluctantly complies, but Emily escapes from rehab to reunite with him. Despite Cherry's attempts to send Emily back to rehab, she insists on staying with him and continuing their drug use. They return to their old ways, and once again, Cherry finds himself needing money. He teams up with Pills and Coke and James to rob multiple tellers simultaneously. As Cherry enters the bank and fires a gunshot, James gets scared and leaves, forcing Cherry to abort the plan. Cherry, Pills and Coke, and James decide on a new plan. James will drive the getaway car, while Cherry and Pills and Coke carry out the robbery. Nervous, Pills and Coke take a potent drug, causing him to act erratically in the bank. Cherry is forced to take control of the situation, which angers Pills and Coke, and he bails, leaving Cherry alone in the bank. Cherry manages to escape the bank and drives away with James. Worried that pills and coke might reveal him to the police if he gets caught, Cherry convinces James to help him find pills and coke. They find him critically wounded from a gunshot. They contemplate taking him to the hospital but realize they would be caught, so they leave him to die and dump his body. The next day, Cherry returns home from a walk with Emily and their dog to find Black waiting for him. Black demands repayment of Cherry's debt, threatening to kill Emily if Cherry fails to comply. Cherry decides to commit one final robbery. The scene then transitions to the start of the film, where Cherry is heading to rob a bank, with Black driving the getaway car. Inside the bank, Cherry collects money from the teller and instructs her to trigger the alarm. He exits the bank, hands over the money to Black, and openly walks into the road. To attract the police's attention, he fires a gunshot in the air and sits on the roadside, getting high for the last time. The police arrive, and Cherry is arrested. The film ends with an epilogue showing Cherry overcoming his addiction and trauma during his 14-year prison sentence, which he serves before being released on parole in 2021. As he walks out of prison, he is met by Emily, the love of his life, waiting for him with a smile.